Start your engines!
It's the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him. He talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver. Pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger. No sweating working for the man, alright.
Hey, race fans, welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to Draft from the Circuits. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about racing. Joining me in the studio tonight, I've got Christopher DeHarde, Louise Torres, and Richard Youden. Guys, how we doing tonight?
So far, so good.
Thank you.
It's been going. It's been a much better week. Feeling a lot better than last week.
All right, good. I'm glad you're feeling better. Yeah, I was a little worried about you last week. So, but anyway, I want to give a quick shout out to our podcast partner, Seth Eggert, dealing with a tough time. He had a death in the family. So I just want to let you know, Seth, we are thinking about you quite a bit. We're keeping you in all of our thoughts. So stay strong, buddy. But anyway,
Indeed.
Indeed. Yes.
Terrible.
Yes. But anyway, so tonight is going to be our 1 year pandemic anniversary special because we all kind of remember this is about the time of year last year, right? When the NCAA tournaments, all the conference championships were heating up, and then, they started canceling sporting events left and right. We had, COVID cases here, COVID cases there. There was a lot of fear that gripped everybody. And I mean, I remember it well. For those of you who don't know me personally, my livelihood, I own and operate a sports bar, and my sales live and die by sporting events, and I'm surrounded by 60 televisions all day long tuned into sporting news. And I just vividly remember the events being canceled one after the other, a big domino effect. As a matter of fact, I remember one of these basketball games got canceled at halftime. Halfway through the game, they said, that's enough. That's enough. Pandemic. I remember the NCAA championship was going to take place with no fans. And then a few days later, they decided it wouldn't take place at all. And then slowly we were left with pretty much zero sports except for, I believe, Korean baseball was the only thing happening at the time. A few international soccer things here and there. But as far as the entire United States went on lockdown, matter of fact, the Indycar series was gearing up to start their season. They were unloaded at St. Pete. The track was built. They had a practice session. Christopher, you were there anticipating the race when they first made the decision to not allow fans and then made the decision to call off the race entirely. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I flew down on the Thursday morning. First of all, to back up a little bit, Wednesday night, the FIA canceled the 1,000 miles of Sebring. And of course, me being the naive idiot that I can be, I went into another podcast Discord server and we were just talking about it. And I was like, guys, they're not going to cancel Sebring. Anyway, so that was Wednesday night. And I had requested off from my other job for 10 days because my plan was to cover St. Petersburg and Sebring. Well, Thursday morning, I get up, go to the airport. I park at a friend's apartment complex. And I get to the airport, get checked in, all that good stuff. So on my flight was Charlie Kimball, the two Daves, First and Calabro, and a couple of other IndyCar staff, like Webmaster, a couple of other people like that I knew from the radio people. Anyway, then we fly down, and I get there around like 10:15 or so, and I see that they've announced, oh, we're not going to have any fans, and I'm like, okay. All right. And then around noon or so, they announced that Sebring is postponed to November. And that's what I'm thinking. Okay, this is a bit worse. So then we go to 12:30 or so. 1 o'clock is when Joey Barnes got there. He and I got a Uber over to the credential office. And the credentials office, by the time we got there, it was already closed for the day. We found out there was going to be a press conference at the police department. So I walked down the street in St. Petersburg to get to the police department, got there right after the press conference started. And they said they were going to run the event with no fans, with a condensed schedule and with enhanced health screenings, which meant you got to answer a 4-question survey, get your temperature checked, and you had to arrive between 6 and 8 in the morning at a remote parking place, and they would bus you in to the complex. Now, I took a shower that Thursday night, and when I got out the shower, I got an email saying that my media credentials had been rescinded for the weekend. I didn't have a hard card because I was trying to start my own IndyCar news outlet. That didn't happen because of other things. But anyway, so I went to bed, woke up, to Matt Weaver, who had gotten there around 3:00 in the afternoon on Thursday. Him and Joey left for the track. I went back to bed, slept around 11:30. They get back to the hotel. They kick the bed that I'm sleeping in, say, wake up. IndyCar canceled everything in March and April. So at that point, it's like, all right, what now? Well, Wednesday night, I called mom and dad up, said, hey, if everything goes crazy, can I stay in New Orleans for 10 days? They said, sure, because the schedule's already been written. I'm not going to be put back on it, So anyway, call mom and dad up, tell them what happened. They said, get yourself on a flight to New Orleans. And so that's what I did. I went to New Orleans and I was going to stay there for 10 days and then fly back to Indy. 10 days turned into 2 weeks, which then turned into 4 weeks because my work said that they would pay people while they were unable to have customers in the building. Then April 15th, I got furloughed and I flew back up to Indianapolis April 18th to get my car. And that's how the pandemic really started. But it was just so crazy because, while I was in a coffee shop writing an article on that Thursday is when I saw that the NCAA tournament had been canceled. And it's just like the hits just kept on coming. It was just the news was making your head spin. It was very much a case of like almost dead man walking because you're like, what the heck's going to happen next?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. We went from life being relatively normal to suddenly having no sports, no haircuts, no bars, no dine-in restaurants. There was a lot of flap over which businesses were considered essential and which ones were not. It got to the point the only place you could go was the grocery store or the gas station. There was no entertainment, no live events. A lot of folks were asked to work from home or asked to not work at all. The unemployment systems in various states were absolutely overloaded with unemployment claims coming in. And a lot of folks, it took them a lot of time to get any money in the bank. And then just the fear that gripped people. I mean, if you walk down the aisle the wrong way at the Walmart, you'd have some Karen type, oh, you're going down the wrong way. You know what I mean? And, don't get within 6 feet of me, social distance yourself. And now a year later, I see that a lot of folks are over it. As a matter of fact, I, last night being St. Patrick's, I went out to the pub and, it was crowded, wall to wall people, very few people wearing masks. I think a lot of folks are over it. We're getting vaccines out there that sports have returned, albeit with limited numbers. So now, Louise, you've lived through this thing as well. So let me throw it over to you before we get Richard's thoughts on our pandemic anniversary.
Yeah, basically, unlike Chris, I was not at St. Petersburg. As a matter of fact, I was at my mundane job, the old job that I had with my father. When I found out all this ordeal, once the NBA games were started canceling, my mindset was like, what is going on? It started to feel like the Stranger Things were something was not right. And my mind was in a spin of whirlwind because I knew when these cancellations were keep happening, I knew because the mindset that my mentality at the time, I was still very angry and bitter over the fact that I did not fulfill the whole speed weeks at Daytona. And then once these events started canceling, I was getting real worried. What does it mean for the smaller outlets, the independent journalists, those who don't have don't make a true living out of this industry. What does it mean for them? It concerned me to where I became paranoid of going outside and doing anything. Now, today, it just varies on where I would like to go, where it's right, if it's right, and when it's right. But once those cancellations started coming up, I was getting concerned. It's like, yeah, this is not anything I planned, like the Indianapolis 500, the Cup finale of Phoenix, everything that were in advance that I had in mind of wanting to do. I don't get my hopes up, expect nothing, and just live day by day rather than in advance. It took me a long time to accept the fate that certain things just did not happen. It may have set back certain folks in the media realm for years back than it should. I understand why priority are more to this established because they are the ones that get paid for it. But there are others that are trying to break through in this business as best as possible to where it's very hard to even find a way to break through unless you're very active or progressive. Because this past year, these Zoom calls is pretty much the only way the only ticket to some folks to get someone noted or maybe go cover a race in the pandemic. Because I know for a fact that I think it was David Morgan and maybe Seth as well. We're planning to go to Atlanta, and then I felt bad for David a lot more because he and I were there at Daytona when we had to go home. So for David, for that matter, I was concerned for him because it's like, geez, this luck is isn't getting any better. He couldn't go to Atlanta because they found out, I think, like Friday morning that, nope, we're done. We're not going to continue the Atlanta race. We're moving everything back. And on the NASCAR end, because Chris pretty much covered the Indycar, as I'll say on the NASCAR end, they were proactive. Even Formula One, they had a couple positives down there with the McLaren crew to where they had to postpone the race in Melbourne and ultimately got canceled. So once those events keep racking up, postponement, cancellations, or no crowds, it's just you got to do what you can. Because I know at the very beginning, once the racing season resumed, they only allowed 5 people, only getting on the photography end, and 5 people who were in the National Motorsports Press Association. Over time, they started allowing more people, but it's mostly those who have annual credentials. And much of Chris's this year on the NASCAR, and I unfortunately don't have one. IndyCar is a massive to be determined for 21. I'm not expecting any hopes on that regard, but it changed a lot of landscapes for those media folks, especially the outlets that are not relatively like the Motorsport or the Auto Weeks of the world, and vice versa. So
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, this past year has to be a lot of changes, a lot of learning curves. But I knew the biggest thing is just expect nothing. If there's an opportunity, just take it if it's right, when it's right. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, Louis. Yeah, I mean, it affected everybody's lives in so many ways. I mean, there were folks that just weren't able to work. And then there were folks that were expected to, double and triple time because different places would reduce the amount of staff and expect more work out of the so-called essential workers. So now, Richard, you've been quiet over there. So, but this, I always like to say that. Yeah. But this pandemic was really, it kind of ramped up over in Asia and Europe before the numbers started to spike here in the States. And you being my favorite person from Europe, I know you've got friends on
probably
both
quite a small pool, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, so you've got friends on both sides of the pond. So, I mean, what were your experiences as all this was sort of how? I know you went from going to work on a daily basis to working out of your home.
Yeah. I mean, for me, obviously, work. In a way, I was lucky. Not working directly in the racing industry because it was hit pretty hard, and I know a lot of people who were at, especially some of the cup teams around here in North Carolina, they were furloughed, and they, some people even lost their jobs outright, which was very, very unfortunate. And the company that I work for now, we were supported, very, very well, and I've been able to work from home for the last year. But looking back on it, it was sort of Italy really that sort of had the first sort of big spike, wasn't it? In sort of the developed world where media was readily available and transparent. And then now we look at the cases that Italy had, and they're sort of relatively small compared to other parts of the world. But it's not been fun. And to be openly honest with you guys, in early November, both my wife and myself actually contracted COVID, and it was, it wasn't nice. You got your 10 days and all this sort of stuff, and we weren't. The strange thing about it was we weren't incredibly sick, but it lingered for so long. It probably took me 3 or 4 weeks before I felt normal, and probably took my wife a little bit longer. She actually got bronchitis as a side effect of it, which was pretty nasty. It's certainly not. It's certainly been bad, and it's certainly not something I would encourage. And the transmission rate of this thing is incredibly high. And the rate at which it spread was, amazing in many, many ways. But I think what it's highlighted and what gets missed is how it's enabled companies to diversify, and shows what people can do in a bind. And I'll take, a lot of the Formula One teams. There was the project pole position. I can't remember what it was now in the UK, where all of the Formula One teams, picked up, the gauntlet, and were starting to build ventilators and starting to do all of this work, and provide PPE and all this sort of stuff. It was fascinating to see, and it really was commendable for what they've achieved. The fact that so many major sports were able to get back, went back into, IndyCar and NASCAR got a season in, Formula One got a season in, and so many other sports got to see their seasons completed, was really testament to how we can think outside of the box as a society and as an organization to get these things done. And a lot of people need a lot of credit. And it's been a testament to sort of human endeavor in many, many ways. And coming from the UK and from Europe, you often think of how previous generations have coped with similar things to this, although on a different scale. When my grandparents' generation, for example, living through the Second World War, and how that, how they got through that, and this is obviously not on the same level, but it's probably the closest thing that we'll ever have in our lifetimes to that sort of sense of, social responsibility, and working together to try and improve a pretty nasty situation. But hopefully we're on the tail end of it now, and the vaccines are becoming available. And the sad thing is, I've been an engineer all my life, and I believe in science and I believe in facts. And science and fact has gone out the window in a lot of circumstances over the last 12 months or so. And I think that's a real shame. I urge people to listen to the scientists and listen to the experts out there, and not play politics with people's health, and really take on board what these people say, and take the advice and do what they need to do to eradicate this.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I agree with you fully. There's a lot of, there's more misinformation out there than there needs to be. But, but to your point about the, human ingenuity and problem solving and figuring out ways to do things like get our children educated when they can't go to school, and getting kids fed, that, because there's a large, a large section of the population that those kids count on that school lunch as their one, their one nutritious meal of the day. And I've seen a lot of cases where like right here in my own hometown, if I wanted to, I could drive up to the school and pick up lunches for my daughter, and they're more than willing to hand out as many lunches as you wanted. Just to make sure that everybody is taken care of. And you see a lot of folks coming together and whatnot. And here we are almost a year later. And, we've seen some of the fear has gone down. But the numbers are still there. We've seen the mask mandates. We've seen the maskers, the anti-maskers and whatnot. And And here we are. And hopefully, like you said, we're on the tail end of this. I know that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has been set up as a mass vaccination site. I hear that they're vaccinating as many as 17,000 people a week. Does that sound right, Christopher? I know you live right there.
They had a clinic for a few days. It was like 4 or 5 days, I think it was. And they got a few thousand people. It wasn't exactly, like it was going to be a long-term thing because availability is still limited. But the good thing is that it was very efficient. A friend of mine that works with me, whose great uncle was in the race, actually was able to get everything done in it was only in line for like 3 or 4 minutes. So
yeah, I did kind of hear some folks kind of compare, because they were using the Formula One garages for the things, and they had a drive through there, and somebody actually compared it to making a pit stop at Indy. You're in and out, boom.
Well, my buddy actually asked the security guard if he could drive on the track, and the guy said no, but he said, to your credit, you're the first person that's actually asked me that. So I thought that was kind of
really
funny.
Only one person asked. That'd be the first thing I'd ask.
Yeah, I'm surprised with that.
Yeah. All right. So well,
if I may say, Frank, Indiana has done a great job with the vaccination groups that are eligible, because they just recently announced that if you're 45 and older, you are eligible to get the vaccine. But I only wish that the definition of essential worker could be expanded to include food service and retail, because I believe that those groups should be vaccinated after healthcare workers, because they've been, at the job since this pandemic started.
Oh yeah. Well, in Kentucky, retail and food service are considered essential, and they are eligible right now.
I don't even want to get into Washington at all.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, we are a motor racing show, so we should talk about some motor racing, I guess. So instead of talking about vaccines and whatnot,
I don't want to.
Although it is very interesting to talk about. But as the pandemic wore on, we saw a big kick in popularity in iRacing, and our friend Seth stopped writing about real racing and started writing about iRacing, and he still writes about iRacing, and he's actually doing pretty well with it. The interest in iRacing, where it kicked up when it was the only racing to watch, is kind of still there. As a matter of fact, Indycar had an iRace earlier tonight that Alex Palou won as a primer to the the actual season beginning here at Barber in a few weeks. And then we were innovative on our programs here, Drafting the Circuits. I think we did a trivia night. We did a whole show talking about racing movies. We just made the best of it. So, but here we are a year later, and we've got NASCAR's a couple races in. Formula One's getting ready to gear up and start. IndyCar is getting ready to gear up and start. And so NASCAR, we were at Phoenix this past weekend, and once again, Louise, the Penske cars were in the mix all day up front, but couldn't seal the deal.
Yeah, they've mastered the pit stops. Joey Logano could be like 4th or 5th after a long green run, and then boom, he's out of like the top 2 because they were just delivering boss pit stops. But they just couldn't get it done because Truex just had a better car, a better restart for that matter. He was right up there with Logano, and just the what would be considered the ideal lane. And that scenario where he was, and Truex ended up winning the race for the first time. And I mentioned this multiple times. Like, it's been a long time. It's been that weeknight race in Martinsville, and we don't have to talk about that anymore because Truex won the Darcy. But Penske's yet again bridesmaids. They've had quite arguably the strongest cars all season. They just cannot win when it matters. When it's clutch, they've been the opposite. Whether they've been wrecked out or they've just been outperformed.
Yeah, all 3 cars. All 3 cars have been spot on at times, but not on the last.
I don't know about Blaney though. Yeah, I don't know about Blaney.
Blaney's been pretty good. I mean, he's okay. He's not been as spot on as say Brad and Joey.
Compared to Brad and Joey, they've been right there. Blaney has had other stuff that kept them out. on this order. Except for Vegas, he was there too. But the other ones, he was just almost essentially MIA in my book. But eventually they got to get it done. I think Atlanta, and I don't have a clear favorite for Atlanta, honestly, if you were to tell me, because I think 5 or 6 cars could probably be contenders of that one. Depends how Hendrick will do, which they've been on it. If you want to talk about another team that has been rivaling with Penske, Miss Hendrick. The problem is when you have 3 cars that started at the rear of the field for failing pre-race, the other one got wrecked out over an accordion effect, Alex Bowman, and those pit penalties from Larson and Elliott, that will keep you out of the contention. And that definitely hurt those guys from being there with Logano, Hamlin, and Truex. But this was a definite Joe Gibbs kind of day until Kyle Busch had that uncontrolled tire where he almost could have been running but not scored. And then from that point, just his day went downhill horrifically, whereas Hamlin and Truex were battling for the leader being right up front.
Yeah. So we've got a different winner in every race so far this year. And given the guys that have not won this year, we're really on pace to have another, unique winner in 2021 coming up in Atlanta, because you figure, Harvick's not won yet. The Penske's haven't won yet. Denny Hamlin hasn't won one yet. Kyle Busch hasn't won one yet. So, it's going to be a very interesting season. I could really see us getting to where we have more than 16 winners in the season, just at the pace we're going.
Yeah, the pace we're going, probably. I'm still not getting my hopes up that we'll have more than 16, but we'll see about that come in the summer. But compared to the other 4 races, this one is where you can consider the usuals, like a Truex and Harvick and Keselowski, Logano, the usual guys that fight for the wins. This was the first one from that core of the group. Because Larson is the first year at Hendrick. He went through that suspension phase. But he was never, when he was with Ganassi, he was never that guy with the Penske's and the Gibbs and so on. And then you have the other winners that, we expect them to win because they've been good in the past, but not at the circumstances or be that dominant. This time around, Phoenix, we saw the core guys be up battling for the lead and win.
Yep, it was all the usual suspects at the front. So now, Richard, what were your thoughts on Phoenix and this particular package? I thought that it's once again made for a pretty entertaining race.
Yeah, it's a good little track, isn't it? It's a little bit unusual. You saw Brad Keselowski, I think it was at the start of the race, take the lowest line through that dogleg kink I think I've ever seen. He almost hit the pit exit there, didn't he? But it's a good track, and there was some reasonably good racing there again. As we mentioned, Truex is probably the first winner in 2021 that you look at the end of the season and say, yeah, he could be there. The other guys, maybe Larson could be there or thereabouts. Depends how he goes through the rest of the season with a decent machinery. Again, Penske, as we mentioned, Penske were good all day during the race, but it's just that last stage really, and it's how flexible your car is. Do you build the cars good for a long run or good for a short run or vice versa? And we remember back to when Logano won the championship a couple of years ago at Homestead. His car was set up perfectly for like a 20-lap run, and there was a caution with like 10, 15 laps to go, and he moved to the front. Whereas, maybe this last weekend, it was slightly different. And actually, Truex said his car wasn't good on a short run, and they made some changes on the last stop there, and got the job done. And credit must go to his crew chief there, James Smalls, who's somebody I've worked with in the past, and great guy, great crew chief, and managed to pull out the win there at the end. But it was good racing, good package, great little circuit, good fun, a little bit different from everything else we see there. The doglet or the U-shaped pit road always makes things a little bit interesting. And
I like where they've moved the start finish to. It's just it's really interesting because it's non-traditional compared to where it is at most tracks. When they did the remodel there, they moved that start finish line, so it's really in an interesting place that's that's pretty unique to the to the rest of the NASCAR tracks.
Yeah, and to people, I've been there a couple of times when we've been testing and racing out there, and to my mind, the setting there is one of the most picturesque settings for a racetrack that I've been to anywhere in the world. It's in the southwest of Phoenix there, and it's in the mountains or at the base of the mountains and the hills. It's almost a natural amphitheater. You see a lot of people camping on the hills around the track, and yeah, I got some great photos from there, just of the scenery more than anything. It's a beautiful, beautiful racetrack to go to. So if anybody's out on the West Coast,
you've got the
wants to go to a race,
cactuses around there
yeah,
that are just kind of neat to
you know,
see. You know, if you don't,
trust
if
me,
you,
from a
yeah, I
from
mean,
a guy who
if you're a city guy, seeing that is just kind of neat.
And I totally vouch for
Well,
what Richard is saying as well.
yeah, trust me, growing up on a wet, cold, windy Silverstone, Phoenix is a million miles away from there.
Yeah, so
No,
we're
but if anybody wants to get to a race on the West Coast and wants to go to a pretty cool city as well, I like Phoenix as a city. It's a great place to go to, and it's small. You can see everything. Compact. Really good facilities. Highly recommended that drive.
What do you mean Phoenix is a cool city? It's in the middle of a desert.
It's a hot city then.
Well, so was Las Vegas, but people seem to enjoy that.
Vegas for me, I had to see it for believe it, but that's a long story with Vegas. Considering it's just, I remember back in the day, like what was it? I think it was Robbie Gordon in the NASCAR Drivers 360 episode where if you go a certain shortcut, you'll cut the traffic and a lot of time because it is pretty hellacious with traffic. I'd imagine. I don't know about now. But the only thing that would rival Phoenix as far as the picture ass point of view that I've been to so far is probably Laguna Seca because you have it's a sight in my book as well for sure.
Well, have you been to Road America?
I have never been to the Midwest until probably early May.
I was gonna say, Road America is absolutely beautiful. And to your point, Laguna Seca is very nice at the right time of the year. You know what I mean? It suffers the same fate as Sonoma, where it looks pretty half the year, but it looks pretty dry and dead in other parts of the year. So, but there are a lot of beautiful racetracks in the United States. So we're off to Atlanta. Speaking of beautiful racetracks, Atlanta's one that could use some help.
They have two races. They'll hopefully they'll do well enough. Problem is the second one is probably at the worst time of the year to have it based on the temperatures. A couple of people were telling me like, why would you put it at that time of the year? I think it's like what, July or what it might have been. It might be. It's like that's like the hottest point of the year. Have fun getting people because they're trying to do this renovation project to make it more attractive, more appealing to the eyes to where they could get crowds because Atlanta has went through a lot of changes since that tornado a decade and a half ago to where it's just the front stretch. That's all they have in grandstands. They got rid of the Elliott stands in turn 3 that used to be old turn 1. They could use a lot of help in that department.
Have they resurfaced Atlanta yet? I don't think they have.
No,
they haven't. They
postponed it in the past several years because they just love the surface. But some people say, yeah, it's old surface, but the racing isn't all that good. That goes back to the package.
I mean, the only people it's not good for are the tire technicians who've got to keep loading up sets of tires every time there's a pit stop because nobody stays out there.
Well, I mean, anybody that complains about the service at Atlanta, they should just take them out to Sebring for a day, and then they'll wish they were back in Atlanta.
That erroneous.
Write a Jobnik article about it.
Yeah, that erroneous.
Yeah, I know.
Article.
I saw that.
I looked at the title's like, let me see who wrote it. It's like, oh, it's the same guy that wrote about that thing about Indianapolis. It's like, yep.
Yeah.
Or you go to where is it? Montreal when the track started to crack at Montreal about 10 years ago during the F1 race, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the worst. I don't know if you guys are probably too young to remember the 1984 Formula One race in Dallas.
I've heard about it. Yeah,
was a nightmare. I mean that's the one. It was. They said, hey, 4th of July weekend would be a great place to have a race in Dallas when the ambient temperature is 115 degrees, and the surface started breaking up on the first practice. And every night they're out there patching it with concrete, and it was just a mess. And this is the same race where Nigel Mansell thought it was a good idea to hop out of his car in 115 degree heat wearing a black driver's suit and try to push it across the line until he just, overcome with heat exhaustion, collapsed on the track there, making for, Nigel's always been a bit of a fine actor when it comes to, creating drama, but I don't think he was acting there.
Lionel, remember?
Yes.
Tifosi called him.
Yeah.
But there was talking about tracks breaking up. Now, this is going back, I can't remember the exact circumstances, but it may have been a British Grand Prix or another British like touring car race or something like that. And they got one of these Harrier planes, these vertical takeoff and vertical landing planes to come in and do a demonstration. And it actually landed on the circuit and took off, horizontally off the circuit like a helicopter almost. But of course, it uses a jet engine to generate lift, and it blew the track surface apart and melted it.
Oh no!
I don't remember something like that happening.
Yeah, and I think it was on like part of the track where thankfully they could put like a separate, they could shortcut the corner or something like that. While you guys are talking about something else, I'll have a look see if I can find it because
I thought you were going to bring up Martinsville 2004, and then you brought up British touring cars. Like, oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
I was at that race in Martinsville 2004 as a fan, as a spectator. I was sitting up there, and I usually prepare well for a race. When it comes to having a couple coolers full of beverages, but other people around me didn't, and that hour and a half delay caused some folks to run out of beverages, but it was a nice little side business for me because people say, man, I'll give you $10 for a can of beer. I'm like, okay.
There you go. You made it.
Yep. Maybe need enough money to buy a nice t-shirt on the way out. So, but anyway, I digress. We should go ahead and make our picks for Atlanta because I want to talk about IndyCar testing and Formula One testing as those seasons are beginning to ramp up. So, Christopher, I'll start with you since you're our resident non-NASCAR guy and see who you feel might win this Cup race coming up in Atlanta.
Bland Chase from the same damn place.
Okay. Chase Elliott. Louise, what do you think, buddy?
I think I'm going to go with Harvick repeating Atlanta again. I think, like I said, it's going to be very, very tight, but I feel like this might be Harvick's race to lose, but not by much, though.
But not by much. Okay. And Richard?
Yeah, I was going to go for the bottom feeder Harvick. I remember, he just has a line that pretty much nobody else can drive around there. I remember, listening to people, other drivers following him in the race, trying to copy his line, and they just can't do it. But, he gets a setup on the car and he gets a line, and nobody else can beat him around there. Outside of that, I fancy Carl Larson again. And I think the Hendrick cars.
I was thinking that too. That's Jimmy Johnson's old crew, and Johnson's always performed well at Atlanta.
Yeah, they're not going to. I don't think Larson will be a million miles away.
No.
And I personally, I'd say he's an early dark horse for the championship. Is Larson? I really do. I think he's, we've spoken about this on the show before. What he went through last year, probably in a way, could actually turn out to be a good thing for his career in the long term.
I'm going to say nothing because that's one of my bold predictions to where I don't actually have Larson in making it past the round of 16. But if I'm wrong, then I'll be okay with that one.
Yeah.
All right. And that leaves me to pick. Well, that leaves me to pick. And I really got to believe that these Penske guys are going to get one in sooner than later. And, Brad's won at Atlanta, I think, twice over the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm going to go with Keselowski and says Penske finally gets that win in when their cars have been pretty darn good week in and week out on nearly every track. So that being said, Christopher, IndyCar testing in full swing. We're starting to see some of the liveries, some of the drivers with their new teams. One of the weird things about this year, we'll be seeing Helio Castroneves driving a car that's not a Penske car, which we haven't seen since 1999, which is a lifetime ago. So, who do you like IndyCar wise? You're just early. I'm
kind of confused because didn't Elio drive last year for Arrow McLaren SP in the Harvest Grand Prix?
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he filled in for Askew at the end of the year. Yeah, you're right.
But he's referring full time, of course.
Yeah, I know.
You're Chris.
There's one thing I'm known for on the
over
show.
50.
It's giving grief. All right.
Yes, this is true. So why don't you tell us who you like this year and who you like to give grief to?
Well,
other than me.
Honestly, I really am looking forward to seeing what there's there's 3 drivers in particular I'm looking forward to watching. Actually, 4. I'll tell you that, like 4. Scott McLaughlin, because Scott Learns America. He's fully embraced everything. 2, I really am looking forward to seeing what Colton Herta will do with his dad on the timing stand. And I know this is going to be very Andretti Autosport centric, but I don't care. 3 is Alexander Rossi, seeing him try and bounce back from the year that he had. A couple years ago, I predicted him to win the championship, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. And the 4th is Jack Harvey, because I think that team will be even stronger with a second car, and having Elia's leadership will really help. However, I have to say they're all going to be fighting for second place, because Scott Dixon's going to win another championship, because at this point, he's almost the GOAT.
Oh, he is the GOAT, yeah. But also other guys that I'd like to keep an eye on for sure are the McLaren guys, both Felix and Pato. I think these guys have an excellent chance to enter victory circle this year. Felix did win a race last year. Pato had several podiums last year.
Pato will be the next first-time winner.
I'm sorry, Pato will be the next first-time winner?
Correct.
I will not disagree with you on that. I think you're spot on. Absolutely correct.
I'm seconding on Pato as well.
Yep. Yeah. But again, to your point, Jack Harvey, I really like Jack Harvey quite a bit. He's done a lot of really neat stuff to endear himself to the fans, especially during the pandemic shutdowns. He had all his little videos called "You Don't Know Jack." And I think he's just he's got a wonderful personality. I think he's a fine driver. And this whole, odyssey with Shank slowly expanding, a few more races each year to where he's going to, have a nice full season this year with a teammate with a lot of experience. I think Jack Harvey's going to be one to watch. But again, you can't take your eyes off the Penske guys. I think that Will Power is more motivated than ever, just, based on some of the things that I've seen him say and seen him do. And of course, Newgarden is, he's in his prime. He's priming himself to be that next GOAT. And Pagenaud is just always there. He's always been kind of up and down, but when he gets hot, he's hot.
I've been thinking about the last couple of years is when you have Rossi, coming onto the scene in 2016 the way he did, and Newgarden was starting his ascension at the same time. In my opinion, that's the next big American rivalry. It used to be Andretti and Foyt, then it was Andretti and Unser. The next big American rivalry is Rossi and Newgarden. And of course, they may like each other, be friends or whatever, but this is probably the next big thing, because you've got a lot of people, pitch, fits about, American drivers, this and that. These are 2 guys that wave the American flag right by their name, and this is what should be promoted like crazy.
And throw Colton Herta into the mix there too.
Colton's still a kid.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
he's a rising star though.
He is a rising star, but Newgarden and Rossi have a lot more experience. Colton's a kid.
All right, Richard, your thoughts here?
There's something about Colton Herta, which, it's 2 years out since he won his first race, and I think he's won 2 or 3 races now, hasn't he? I don't know. There's something that just
on that one, I think.
Sorry?
You're right on that one, I think. Coda, Laguna, and one of the Mid-Ohio races.
He's got 3 race wins.
Yeah, and nothing against the guy. I don't have anything against. Something just doesn't sit right. I don't know what it is, and I genuinely hope I'm proven wrong here. But something's just I don't know. You're looking how guys like Joseph Newgarden came up, and some of these other guys that have come up through the ranks. Something just doesn't click with me. As I say, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he does go on and have a very successful career and wins multiple races and championships and the like. But it's going to be an interesting season. Of course, rookie 45-year-old rookie and Jimmy Johnson out there, seeing what he can do. And it's the usual crowd, isn't it, at the front there? And you imagine you're going to see progression from And the McLaren team, they're going to do things right and they're going to do things methodically. And I think they're going to be in a strong position. But I think it's going to be a fascinating season with some, that rivalry, as you say there, the Joseph and Rossi rivalry, they're really starting to build. We'll see how it all pans out throughout the year. Be interesting to see how Will Power does, because he had a bit of a off season last year, but I think memory serves me right, he had a pretty strong end to the season, didn't they? So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back, because Will's in his early 40s now, and he isn't having.
I think he just turned 40 this year.
Okay, so he's 40. So he isn't having this sort of like stellar twilight of his career like Scott Dixon's having. The only reason that Will seems to be off the pace is because of the outstanding standard that he set himself, in the last 10 years, So even if you have a small dip from those levels, it's noticeable. So it'd be interesting to see how he comes up, because, everybody knows that there's Roger Penske's not afraid. He wants the best drivers out there available to him. And he's not, obviously Newgarden's probably got his seat in that team tied up for the next 10 years or so, probably, if he wants it. So those, you only have a limited number of seats. So if some other young drivers are coming available, then it's certainly going to put pressure on guys like Will and Sam Pagenaud there.
Yeah, for sure. Now Penske expanding to 4 cars. Once again, they've gone to 4 cars before, and they've with varying success. Ganassi's expanding out to 4 cars. They have expanded to 4 cars in the past, with that success only extending to 2 cars or 2.5 cars sometimes, or to 1 car at other times. But at the same time, Andretti, who's always run a larger team, is actually paring down from 5 cars to 4. And they're adding James Hinchcliffe into the mix there. Now, Hinchcliffe, he's always been on the fringe of greatness. But also on the fringe of also ran. So now, Christopher, what are your thoughts on Hinchcliffe? This is probably his best chance to win races since he first joined Andretti Autosports back in 2013.
The thing with Hinchcliffe this year is that he doesn't have to deal with the politics of it. Like, so the last couple of years, he's had to deal with, is he gonna? Oh God, what was the? I just lost my train of thought completely.
Well, the Honda thing. Yeah, it's a Honda thing. Yeah.
So no, I got my train of thought back. I'm so sorry. Just a lot of things are just going on right now. Don't have to worry about the whole Honda, Chevy, this, that. It's just, it's all good now, and he's used to dealing with these people.
Yeah, all he's got to do right now is go to work and drive.
Exactly.
He's got all the sponsorship is lined up. He's ready to go. He's got a seat for the full season.
And let's face it, he lost his ride with a mess up circumstance in the first place. It wasn't
at the last minute too.
Yes,
they left him kind of left out in the cold for last year.
And considering the fact that his team owner had what's the way it helped him out when he was on the mend. It just was not good how that whole relationship ended. But now he's working for someone who believed in him. After Dan Wheldon had his accident, he was going to be with Dan, and Dan passed away and Hinch was brought in. So Michael Andretti had faith in him back then, and he has faith in him now to continue this. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hinchcliffe still has some good years left in him. I mean, there are folks that would care to write him off, but I disagree. I've always liked Hinch as a personality, and again, he's had a lot of flashes of brilliance behind the wheel. I mean, he had a great win at Long Beach a couple of years ago. I remember his first win at St. Pete was a fantastic win. So best of luck to Hinchcliffe for this year. Now beyond that, let's talk about the Ray.
If he doesn't get it done now, though, it's
realistically
over, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Rahal team a little bit. We're returning with Graham and Takuma. Takuma's coming off a season where he won the Indy 500 yet again. I want to say right now, Takuma, who's over 40, but seems to get,
doesn't it?
43. Yeah, it gets better with age, but I want to say he's got a better shot at being the next 4-time Indy winner than Elio does at this point. I'm just throwing that out there with how good he is at that particular track and how
no driver has won the Indy 500 after winning it for Roger Penske. So think about that.
Huh?
Just to repeat, no driver has ever won the Indy 500 after they won it for Roger Penske.
Okay, you're talking about Elio. I was trying.
Yeah.
I was talking about Takuma, and you just
you said he has a better chance of winning 4 times than Elio does, and I feel
right. So you're saying the Elio chances are now over that he's left Penske. Yeah. So yeah, but they said no driver.
That's a good point, though.
Well, yeah, but they said no driver has ever won the Indy 500 after leaving Team Penske, except for Tom Sneva.
He didn't win the 500 for Team Penske, though.
He never won.
Exactly, but he won.
First.
He won the 500 after leaving Team Penske, but he didn't win a 500 with Penske. Yeah, I'm just saying there's loopholes to every rule.
Yeah, he won the championship without winning a race for Penske. That's one thing.
That's what got him fired.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you won the championship, you're fired. So anyway, so let's IndyCar season takes off in April. We're going to start the season at Barber, which is a beautiful race course. Because we were speaking about beautiful race courses earlier, Barber is right up there. But we've got some time left to talk about Formula One. Richard, the Formula One guys were all testing out there in the desert, Bahrain.
Yep, Bahrain. Yeah.
Yep. So let's talk about some of the early test numbers from Formula One. It looks like Mercedes struggled a tiny bit here and there.
A little bit, yeah.
Had a little bit of an off-course excursion. So I'll let you fill us in.
So going into 2021 was meant to be the new era regulations, big upgrades, new car and the like. And with everything that happened last year, the decision was made to push that back through to 2022. So we've got another year of the current generation of car and current rules package on the aero side. And what the FIA did was to allow teams to make some changes. They introduced this token system. And each team was allowed to use 2 tokens to work on structural aspects of the car. Now, bodywork can change. So you can make adjustments to the front wing, to the rear wing, all these sort of things. But if you want to change like a crash structure, like a nose cone or a gearbox mount or a side pod, then that would be a token allocation. Engine development was carried on as normal because engines were going to be used under the new rules anyway, the same engine rule. So different teams had different ways of spending these tokens. McLaren used them on their engine integration with them moving over to Mercedes. And some teams tried to pick out areas where they were weak in 2020 and sort of try and rectify those weaknesses. And you've basically got a standard package for this year. You're not going to see teams throwing a lot of resources at the 2021 car. So the pecking order is not going to change massively. McLaren's certainly impressed with the new Mercedes engine after their sort of realization that Honda and Renault aren't as good as Mercedes. They've gone back to an ex-girlfriend, isn't that? After having their sort of split for a few years, they've got back together and they started off exactly where they left off. Being very, very, very impressive performance there. And with the 2 drivers, they've got Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo. Those 2 guys are certainly on the higher end of the driver rankings, I think you'd probably say. Mercedes seem to be struggling with a unpredictable rear end, as it were. I could make a comment about me eating a curry and an unpredictable rear end, but we won't go there. And
Richard, that's horrible.
You're welcome. They've struggled a little bit. Red Bull seem to have got everything together. They've had a really good test session. I don't think they had any real mechanical issues. and that they've just gone out there and almost done a Mercedes. You know, they've put the lap times in, they've checked off all the testing boxes, and they've just been, you know, really, really solid. So, you know, credit to Red Bull. Red Bull, if you like, won pre-season testing for what it's worth. Ferrari seemed to have stepped up a little bit, maybe regained some of the performance that they'd lost with the engine last year. They seem to have found that back. So McLaren look good with the new engine. They've got a relatively trick diffuser there. Some of the changes that have come in for 2021 is the aim of reducing downforce by about 10%. Well, yeah, they do reduce the downforce in one area, and then teams, because they're pretty smart people, find it back. McLaren seem to have introduced a bit of a trick diffuser there. So, you know, good luck to them on that. They seem to have found a bit of a loophole there. It's not like the double diffuser that Braun had back in 2009. You know, it's not going to suddenly make them world beaters, but it's certainly an advantage to them. Outside of that, the new Aston Martin team made their track debut in the green with Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel there. They struggled. They had technical issues and they didn't get as much track time, I think, as they'd like. So there's certainly work to be done there within that organisation. AlphaTauri set some headline with some very, very fast laps, but they were enabling their DRS really early in the lap. Coming off the final turn, they were probably enabling that DRS slot 150 meters before the actual DRS line, which you can do during testing. You can do whatever you like. It's not regulated or restricted as it would be during qualifying or the race. So don't read everything you see in those lap times. But that AlphaTauri is a quick car, and Tsunoda's a reasonably quick driver there. There's, you know, a lot of people question him because he never had a stellar career in some of the junior formers, never won any of the championships, but you know, he seems pretty quick. Williams have a car that they say is faster in certain conditions, but also unpredictable. So you may see Williams have some strong weekends, and then flip around and have a weaker weekend. So hopefully they'll start to score points. You know, Alfa Romeo looked pretty solid. Alpine had a really weird engine cover. They've got this huge bulbous engine cover, which they say actually improves their aerodynamic performance because they sacrifice a bit of center of gravity and a bit of weight high up in the car there, but it allows them to slim out the side pods, which they say get more performance from that sculpted side pod area than they do a higher engine cover. So that's an slightly unusual looking solution. And Haas, I probably think Haas are going to be the team that'll struggle. They've openly admitted they're going to go zero development on the 2021 car. They're going to focus solely on 2022, or that means they've got no money, one of the two. Focusing on the following year is all.
They've got all that Russian money, don't they?
Well, do they really?
I don't know. It's like did they really have the rich energy money? So
exactly. Oh, their car is basically a 200-mile-an-hour Russian flag.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We discussed that last week.
Yeah, and it's quite ironic. You know, Mazepin released his helmet design today, and it's bright orange. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's interesting that he hasn't got any of the Russian flag on his helmet. But
he's got to pretend he's from New Zealand or something. So
exactly, yeah, he's a Russian. Yeah. He's an athlete of Russian descent or something is the term that's going to be used. But I don't think you've heard the last of that story. But it looks like it's going to be relatively similar to what it was last year. You're not going to have somebody jumping up, 3 or 4 spots in the Constructors' Championship. I think come the end of 2021, I don't think any team will move more than one position up or down.
Right.
You may get a team.
And Lewis is primed to break that record for championships.
You would imagine, unless this rear end instability is as big as they make it out. Mercedes have this horrible habit, and it annoys me so much, of going, we're nowhere, our car's terrible, oh my goodness me, it's awful, it's undrivable, and then they win the first 5 races, and that annoys me a little bit. Yeah. It smacks a little bit of arrogance there. It's like, okay, just say it how it, don't, people aren't stupid, don't do that to us.
Especially after last year.
Exactly. But saying that, this year you have 3 days of testing, and it was pretty clear looking at it. Anyway, taking lap times out of the equation, if you watched any of the video, that Red Bull is planted like a slot car. It was phenomenal. And the Mercedes just wasn't quite as good. Not saying it was bad, but it just wasn't as good, which is, that's a shame. So it'd be interesting to see what happens come, the start of the new season there. But in 2 weeks, we're back in Bahrain in 2 weeks. Oh, well, a week and a half now. So
right. Week and a half, and we are right at the end of our hour. So it's time to say goodnight. One more Formula One related note. If we could just talk about it real quick. They released the track design for Saudi Arabia, which is going to be a 27 turn circuit. Did you get a chance to look at that, Richard?
Yeah, I've seen the online videos of it, and it looks quite interesting, but it looks like a procession. There's no runoff areas, there's no curbing, it's just track, wall, which at least Bahrain and Monaco and places like that, you've got nice things to look at. I don't think you've got, you got the nice scenery and the setting's impressive. I don't know what it's going to be like for Saudi Arabia, but
looks like a track that lacks overtaking. It seems like a one-crew track, which is this as much as I'm going to say about that ordeal.
Yeah, and one very quick. I know we're running out against time, but one very quick thing I do want to mention as well, and probably not quite so apparent to a lot of the listeners from the US, but certainly people in Europe and Australia. The passing over the weekend of Murray Walker, who was the lead commentator for the BBC on Formula One since the 1970s, when he took over permanently when Formula One was broadcast on a regular basis in the UK. For me, growing up in the sort of 90s, early 90s, starting to watch Formula One, he was, and this phrase is used often, isn't it? The voice of this particular sport. He was the voice of Formula One. He had an unimaginable enthusiasm and passion for what he was doing, and it was addictive. And it drew you in. It was addictive. It really was. It was fascinating to listen to, and I don't think I've ever seen so much outpouring from Formula One teams and fans for a neutral person, if you like. He had so much respect within the garage. He would if he wanted to, he could. He had carte blanche of the Formula One paddock, and there's very, very few people that had that. He could walk into any garage, talk to any mechanic, any engineer, any driver, anybody in the sport. He could talk to, and just walk around and be completely open with everybody. And it was fantastic, and it is a real loss. It really is. And he had a goodness me, he was 97, so you can't feel like we've lost somebody young there. But he did a fantastic job, and he certainly grew the sport. And his influence and impact on the sport is second to none, really. And certainly, I know a lot of my interest in the sport came from his passion and enthusiasm.
Yeah, I do believe there's a whole book of his phrases that are called Murrayisms.
Yes, I'm gonna stop my stopwatch was one of them. That car's perfectly okay apart from it's on fire.
Yeah.
That car's unique apart from the one behind, which is identical. But it was that he didn't care. He just said what he said, and nobody cared because they knew it came from a sense of passion and enthusiasm and excitement. And he had that. Everything was at 100 miles an hour. Everything was, the pants on fire sort of thing. And if anybody, a lot of the older, pre-2000 archive footages has Murray Walker commentating, and it was fantastic. And as I say, for somebody to be honoured in the way that he has been, who wasn't necessarily a driver, is phenomenal, and he deserves all the credit again. And hopefully, maybe you could name a corner after him at Silverstone, the impact he's had.
Absolutely. Yeah, he will be sorely missed in the sport. So, but with that, we are out of time. So I want to thank you, Richard. I want to thank you, Louise, Christopher. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, and YouTube, who all carry us. And I want to thank you folks that tune in and listen to us week after week. But until next week, good night.
Hoobazoo Radio.